Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Defender. So glad we're with everybody again. Glad you guys are spending some time with us. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, as always, for all the support. Really can't thank you guys enough as usual. Comments have been great recently and all that kind of good stuff. So just great to be back with you. Please keep the comments coming. Please subscribe if you like what you're seeing. Want to get back into another Smith & Wesson semi-automatic. This is another interesting firearm from Smith. This is actually a 909 semi-automatic 9mm full-size single stack 9mm, and it's interesting for a kind of a number of reasons actually, which we'll get into in the deep dive. But maybe one of the most important or significant, if you will, at the end of the day, it's the last evolution to the Model 39, which, as you guys know on the channel, is near and dear to my heart and one of my favorite all-time firearms. So let's get into it. Let's get into the deep dive on this Smith & Wesson 909 Value Series pistol. So the Smith & Wesson 909, very interesting firearm for really, like I said in the intro, a number of different reasons. One of the biggest reasons actually is just the lineage back to the original Model 39, which, as I said again, just absolutely one of my favorite firearms of all time, and probably one of my favorite Smith & Wesson firearms, if not my favorite Smith & Wesson firearm. But this 909 has some interesting, like I said, there's some lineage here. It's interesting how Smith & Wesson brings it out or brings it back and all of that kind of stuff. Real quick, what is it? It's a full-size double action, single action, 9mm single stack. And again, we'll kind of get into all that in the deep dive. It is what they referred to as the Value Series guns. And real quick, we've talked about this before. It is a 3-digit number. Traditionally, 3-digit numbers, model numbers, have been reserved for the second generation guns. But this is actually a 3rd generation platform gun. And generally, those were 4-digit, like 5904. Something like that. So those were generally 4-digit numbers. This is a 3-digit number because in the 90s, Smith decided that they wanted to bring out these Value Series guns, and they went with these 3-digit numbers. The Value Series guns, let me take one step back. There's actually a Model 910 and a 915, which are not actually Value Series guns. They are the very first entry into the water for Smith of trying to reduce costs on their double action, single action, full metal guns to try to compete with Glock, which they see coming, for the law enforcement market in this massive way. So the 910 and 915 are really just slight variations of a traditional 3rd gen gun. But then eventually Smith does introduce the Value Series. I don't remember the exact year the Value Series was introduced, but that is really, again, it's now they have both toes in the water. They're really trying to do everything they possibly can to bring a lower cost full metal hammer fired gun to the market. And so this is kind of where these Value Series guns fall. So that's that side of it. That's why there's a 3-digit number and all of that. But again, what was Smith trying to do with this? And again, we've got a clear and safe firearm, of course. So as I said, this is a final evolution of the Model 39, and I say that because it's a full-size 9mm single stack. And that's interesting in of itself, because let's take another step back. So I think it was about 1988, Smith & Wesson decides to bring out, in the 3rd gen, full featured guns, the Model 3904, which is basically this gun, like I just said, but in the standard 3rd gen full featured range. But they only produce it for 2 years. And I think the general thinking probably was there was not that much interest anymore in a full-size single stack 9mm pistol, right? All of it was double stack, the Wonder 9, all of that, kind of stuff. Capacity was really starting to become a massive topic. We've talked about it a lot on this channel, but again, you can't ignore the 1986 FBI Miami shootout and how that just changed just about everything in firearm handgun firearm thoughts for law enforcement. So I think, the market is kind of talking there in 88 and through 1990 as the full series guns, and say, there just isn't that much demand for it. So they drop it. But again, interestingly enough, then this value series comes out in the 90s, this last gasp, as we say. And in 1995, they bring out the 909. They bring it back. They bring the 3904 back as a value series, but once again, only produce it for 2 years. It's almost a little mind-boggling to me on why Smith thought they needed to do that in the value series. I just don't know. I don't know if they had leftover parts, maybe. I just don't know. I find it interesting that they had one last gasp, again, to use that same term, of a single stack 9mm full size from 95 to 96, and then it's finally done, which is also sad to say. I mean, they have to say that this is it. This is the final version in Smith & Wesson eyes of the Model 39. And also kind of unfortunately, it goes out at a value series pistol. I think it would have been kind of cool if they would have done something else with that. And of course, it would be amazing if Smith & Wesson decided to bring back some of these vintage guns or classic series semi-automatic like they have with the revolvers. I don't know. I'm sure it's just me because I'm biased, but I think the market would gobble it up. But anyways, it deviates from our topic a little bit. So this is our 909. And I just want to tell you a little bit about it, how it's shot, give you the usual specs. As I said, it's 9mm full size, which means that we have a 4-inch stainless steel barrel. And on the value series, let me talk a little bit about that and what makes these different. First of all, my understanding is all of the internals and guts are basically the standard 3rd gen gun. And the guns still had to be produced to a very high quality. They were not making these value series guns to go compete in some low economic market somewhere or provide to like an economic buyer that was looking for something dirt cheap. They were actually still trying to cater to their law enforcement market, but bring a price point that would still have them be competitive in bids and department budgets and things like that. So the gun is actually very well made, very robust, has a lot of 3rd gen parts on it, but in this value series. So let's just talk through that as quickly as we can. I'll move this magazine out of the way. And again, we've got a clear and safe firearm as we talk through it. So the value series, what did they do to this? Well, essentially they started to change the machining of the slide. And that's the very first thing when we do our typical deep dive and we walk around. You can see how blocky this slide is. You do not have any of the nice machining, in my opinion, that you did certainly on the older Smiths and the standard 3rd gen. So you have this, again, very blocky design. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but of course gets the job done. Serrations on both sides, rear serrations, so that stays traditional. You've got kind of more of a basic, roll stamp there into the slide. On the decocker safety, you only get one, so you're cutting costs there, right? Just on the left side of the pistol. As you move up to the top, you have now these plastics. So they've gone to a plastic or polymer front and rear. It's still a Novak design, right? And it's still 3-dot white, so it still works, right? There just happen to be plastic. Now, in this Novak design, you're certainly not going to be racking this off certain things for one-hand manipulations. You just don't have enough real estate there. I think generally these sights held up pretty well overall. So that's what you've got for your sight system. On this side of the slide, you have nothing, right? It's just bare bones, of course, 3rd gen extractor. And you can start to see already on these guns, and I'll talk a little bit about this, you're already starting to see some high or wear on the high points, right, as you kind of just walk around. And that was, again, supposedly another reduction in cost was the finish material on these. The finish was not as good, or the bluing was not as good as the 3rd gen guns. And I think that's generally true from what I've seen and how they've worn. Coming down onto the frame, and I should say this is carbon steel slide, blued, anodized aluminum frame, blued obviously. And as we kind of come down onto the frame, you can see once again, very simple machining on that. Nothing really, it's not elegant or anything like that. There's not a lot of machine work, I guess is what I should say. And even just the way it looks, it almost looks a little second gen to me, right? Just that color, and you can kind of see the wear on some of the high points again. Again, just traditional. This is where the parts are the same, right? You've got your decocker safety and your slide slops, slide stop, slide release, slide lock, whatever you want to call it. These are all third gen parts. Nothing different there. And you kind of come down onto. Now, what I do like about this gun is they went with the rounded trigger guard. Again, harking back to the original 39, but just a nice trigger guard there. I don't really care for the square trigger guard, and I get all that and why they did that back then, but so forth. They did go to a plastic or polymer mag release button, so another cost measure there. They stick with the undercut though, so the machining through the frame is nice. No front serrations at all, so they skip that. You don't really get any beveling. Pretty basic here, so they skip that. Interesting, the one-piece wraparound xenon grip is still the same. That's a third-gen grip, so you're getting that. You still get a full beaver tail, so no problem there. And on this side of the frame, again, it's relatively straightforward, but a nice, decent size, Smith & Wesson trademark stamp there. So that's kind of what you've got with the pistol in terms of the value series and what you're getting and what you're not getting. Again, the pistols were generally very well made. We're still made for this robust market of law enforcement. If you're interested in the specs, I kind of talked a little bit about that, but again, full size 9mm. They were, at this point also, it went to a nine round capacity, so they added one extra round, and the mags are always very nice from Smith. They always made a very nice magazine, full metal polymer base plate, and then this red follower, but always well done. So you get one extra round, so 9 plus 1 is basically your capacity. It's a 27-ounce firearm. Length is about 7.5 inches, height is 5.5, and the width 1.25. And again, these were made from about only 2 years, 95 to 96. And so this, of course, this model falls right into that. There's not too much guesswork with the serial number anymore when you're only making, pistols for a couple years. Generally, the pricing on these is pretty good. We're talking used Glock. Although it's funny, I'm starting to see the numbers come up a little bit on these. They're still pretty prevalent in the market, and sometimes you can actually find more value series guns or the 910s and 915s more than you can the standard guns. Maybe that's because people hold on to the standard 3 gens, I'm not sure. But very nice pistol. How did it shoot? It shot very well. There were no problems, no hangups. Fired everything that I shot through it, although it was just range ammo. I did not get into hollow points or anything like that. So just range ammo on the gun. The grip is very nice. A single stack 9 is very comfortable in your hand. The beaver tail is nice. There's nothing unfamiliar about this grip or grip angle with these third gen wraparound grips. I mean, everything is, for me, certainly very, very familiar given my interest in these and the number of guns that have come across my table over the years. So all of that's very, very familiar. Really, I think recommending these, or if you're interested in these, I should say, I think you've got a very, very nice firearm at a very nice price point. If you can find one that wasn't abused and used heavily, because of that finish wear, I think you get a very, very nice pistol that operates exactly like the third gen standard full featured guns. And that was all true as well. I should state the double action, single action was exactly as I would expect any other Smith & Wesson, third gen, as we've talked about. And I guess we can also talk about, again, the fact that we do have on these guns, there's always a magazine disconnect. That's standard unless a department or an individual department that is asking Smith to disengage it, or an individual has disengaged it. All of these guns come with a magazine disconnect. And as we've talked about before, that's primarily because of this, again, kind of an older school law enforcement concept of being able to eject the magazine and render the pistol safe if that law enforcement officer felt they needed to do so. So that's why it's there. It does provide maybe another mechanism to render the gun safe if you had your firearm was loaded and you've decided to maybe you're putting it up for the day or the evening or what have you, or you're back from shift work. You can easily drop the mag and render the pistol completely safe, but have the mag ready to go if that's what you needed to. I can say that this gap also here down is what I've seen and read is correct and standard. It may be just the fact that they had to lengthen the magazine ever so slightly to get 9 rounds into it. I'm not sure, but this little gap is normal. And again, we'll see if we can do this, and we know we've got a clear and safe firearm. The double action is very Smith & Wesson. It's long and heavy, but extremely smooth, and then the gun breaks. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that double action. And then if we can get the gun to cycle, you're into a single action mode, and then again, the single action is very, very good. You're right there. You probably heard it. And then you break the trigger. The single action, we've talked about it over and over on this channel. The single action on these guns, on the Smith & Wesson 3rd gen, really all of them, really, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gen, that single action subsequent shot is just a great trigger. The reset is right there, very quick, audible, tactical, and then boom, you're at the break. So I think that's one of the major appeals to these guns. Also the fact that they were just very, very robust. So that's the 909. Yeah, I don't think you'll see them very often. Again, this production for 2 years. I'm not even sure they got a full 24 months, 2 years of production out of these guns before they decided to cancel them. I can't remember again. Also, 96 may be when the value series actually was finally stopped as well. So again, just kind of this last gasp of producing the single stack 9mm Smith & Wesson that they were so famous for. So I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's another little look into something that's a little unique on the Smith & Wesson side. You don't see them very often, as I mentioned. I have never seen, actually, in all my years of looking, a 3904. I mean, that was really what I was after, was the traditional standard full-featured 3rd gen single stack 9, which, minus buying one online, which I will do from time to time, but I really just prefer to not only, give local businesses the business, but also, physically see the firearm, review it, test it, really try to inspect it. And so that's how this 909 kind of came across my desk. So again, I hope you guys liked it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you again very, very soon on the Daily Defender.